Starmen Podcast.
Hello and welcome to a Starmen Debates. This is hopefully the final special episode of the Pony Talks.
The grand finale. Yeah, we'll shut up soon.
Thank you if you listened this far and actually listened to all of this.
Indeed. I hope our passion has come across clearly enough. Our demented, crazy passion.
We say with eye twitching and huge, creepy smiles.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. Hi, folks. I'm Curtis, by the way.
So, this is the Starmen Debates. I am your host, Devin. With me is Curtis.
Yep.
Let's just jump right in.
Let's continue.
The top 10 episodes.
Let's do it. Okay. So, I think what we decided on is that we're going to run down our list from 10 to 1, and we're going to stop at 2. We're going to run down some very close contenders. We had some honorable mentions, and then shoot off with our number ones.
We'll reveal the number 1 episodes in our heart.
Yeah.
Now, before we even start this, and I just want to point this out, our lists are so very close.
Yeah, there were some very striking similarities, maybe even more surprising than the similarities that we had in two-parters. Just because we were dealing with, 200 episodes?
Yeah, like over 200 episodes.
And so we somehow
managed to narrow down, and I think...
How many shared did we have, I wonder?
I'm looking that up now. 7. We had, of our top 10, 7 in common.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Man, yeah.
So... we were originally just going to go back and forth on this, but I think we'll go up your list.
Sure.
Because, as I mentioned before, my top 10 list, and other than the number 1 spot,
Yep.
Which I think our number 1s are different anyway.
I don't know that they are, actually. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just showing Curtis my number 1 here, so he
Yep.
can...
Fair enough.
So I'll just chime in with where it landed on my list.
Yep. So maybe I'll run down my list up to number 2, and then you can jump over and any episodes that weren't on my list that were on yours, you can run over.
Sure.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. All right, so let's start with number 10 then on my list, which is Slice of Life. This is the ultimate tribute to the fans, is what this episode is. It's basically them taking 6 beloved background characters that had been given their own personalities and motivations in fandom and giving them their own episode, where more or less they matched those personalities and those fan-made ideals like almost 1-to-1. It's pretty nuts.
So I put this is my number 2.
Uh-huh.
And it's just mind-blowing me how much dedication the writers took to get these characters right.
Yes.
For something a fan made.
Yeah.
There was literally someone scoured the internet for all these characters and went, these are the top 6 people are drawn to. Let's do an episode about them.
Yeah.
Our 100th special episode.
Yeah.
Shout out to the fans. Let's do it.
Yeah. And they tied it all together with like an actually pretty entertaining story. It wasn't just like pure fan dump wankery. It was actually like something that was well plotted, had some really good writing.
It had such a good lesson in it.
Exactly. It ended with an excellent lesson. Care to spell it out for us?
It's basically everyone has their own story to tell.
Yep. Yeah, it was like an epic speech by the mayor, who was like kind of speaking to this crowd of assembled ponies, which included the 6 stars of the episode, the background characters.
But then, like, showed like all the other possible contenders.
All the fan favorites, the ones that didn't quite make the favorite 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
They were all kind of assembled together in this silly wedding that they were putting on for the episode, and having a really good speech about, everybody has a story to tell. Like, yeah. That's just really cool. Yeah. Hell of an episode.
Hell of an episode.
I think you said in your write-up that it's one of those episodes that you can rewatch again and again without ever getting bored.
No, there's always something to pick out. I watched it again just the other day, actually.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So let's then jump to number 9 on my list, which is Luna Eclipsed.
I have this on my list as number 10, but...
Number 10? Yeah. That's fair. This is, as long as it's on your list somewhere, this is the episode that made me a fan for life. So season 1 was amazing. I really enjoyed watching it. Like I said earlier in our season discussions, season 2 is where the show really, really clicked for me.
I like how you threatened me there. This better be on your list.
Yeah, exactly. That was a threat. Yeah, so Luna Eclipsed is the episode that really brought me back to those glory days of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yes.
The thing is, this episode actually holds up, whereas most of those old cartoons definitely do not.
Yeah. So, this episode clicks with me because, one, it's Halloween themed, and
Hell yeah.
anyone who knows me knows I love Halloween.
Yeah.
It's my Christmas.
Yeah, worth mentioning that we're both big fans of like horror-themed media,
Yeah.
which is fun for a couple guys talking about ponies, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
And then the reintroduction of Luna, we see a much more adult Luna from where we left her as kind of a younger looking Luna from season 1.
Yeah, she was kind of redesigned, I think, just more for like consistency. Like, and I guess you could also rationalize it as she was reformed from Nightmare Moon and her powers were weakened, so she didn't have like the big cool flowy mane.
I didn't feel like it needed a rationalization. I just like the redesign.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you really want to rationalize
Yeah.
it, yes, you can say she wasn't at full power when she got
but
her senses
ultimately,
back.
I vastly prefer the redesign.
Yes, much vastly. There's so much going on with it.
Yeah.
I mentioned the starlight hair.
Yeah,
And-
she's like, she has the same sort of basic like model as Celestia with the cool flowing effect, but she's got like a very cool Starry Night motif and awesome looking accessories.
And the glowing eye, like when she gets into those shadows and the glowing eyes.
Yeah.
And that kind of a navy blue. What kind of blue would you say that is on her?
Yeah.
But like a darker blue, just contrasting against the black.
Yeah.
So she silhouettes very well in the night. It's great.
It's great because she's relatable. For one thing, she's a fish out of water who doesn't know how to relate to them kids nowadays.
Yeah.
How do you do fellow kids and all that? Not only that, though, she actually comes across as like a genuine presence in the episode. She isn't just like some floundering fish. You can tell she's royalty. You can tell she's powerful and threatening, even when she doesn't mean to be.
No, like everyone just stops and bows or runs away from her.
Yep, that's her problem. She's feared instead of liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why this didn't get very high on my list.
Yeah.
I did have a gripe with this episode.
Yeah.
And it's how much in the water she is.
Sure.
And it kind of feels like she snuck out of the castle one day and just went into Ponyville.
Yeah.
It felt like her sister never told her, like, hey, this is the new world. We don't use the Canterlot voice no more.
She clearly didn't get etiquette lessons from Celestia after 1,000 years.
Yeah. Like, no one, not even like someone just sat down with her and be like, here, this is how we communicate now. This is how we do things. We've changed our ruling policies.
Yeah. Yeah. You could also just make the argument about the episode that like the Luna parts are so good that the rest of the episode almost feels at times like it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
And to that I say you're right, but Luna's so awesome that who cares? Yeah. It's a
like,
good damn episode.
It's a good damn episode. I just had that one gripe about it, but it's me just nitpicking at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Like we both clearly like it, and whatever we can nitpick is outweighed by our love for just how good this episode is in terms of characterization and theming. Yeah.
So let's move up your list.
Yeah, so next would be All Bottled Up. And this episode represents to me something that we've touched on before, which is the Starlight and Trixie antics. This represents the very best of those antics. This episode is hilarious for starters.
So I was going through this list and your list just to compare.
Yep.
And I thought this was on my list, but it's not.
Oh, huh. Okay. Well, it should be.
It really should be, and I got confused when I was reading up the list because I was like, wait, that doesn't sound like one of my number one.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, this is Curtis's list. Why is this not on my list?
It's kind of funny because we'll touch a bit more on like how we made our lists later, but it was on your list to rewatch the episode, like as a candidate, but not mine.
Yeah.
But I ended up loving this episode. so very interesting.
Fun little
bit of
behind the scenes facts of how we did this, but we'll go over that when we get done here.
Yeah. So what I like about this episode is that it has an A plot and a B plot, and it transitions between basically the A plot is Trixie and Starlight having a friendship issue of sorts, where Trixie's being an obnoxious jerk without really meaning to, and Starlight's getting real pissed about it, but not confronting Trixie and just bottling up her anger, literally, as a spell in a bottle.
Yeah. And I love that Spike addresses this. Like, are you sure that's a good idea? And she's like, probably not, but what else can I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to quickly jump over, while all of this is happening, the B plot is the main six are taking some time away from the castle, leaving Trixie and Glimmer in charge, basically. And they are going to a bit of a friendship retreat where they have just doing some bonding time.
Which is an escape room.
It ends up being the escape room, which is pretty great. And there are some very funny transitions between the A plot and the B plot, where something that's happening in the A plot ends up being relevant to what's happening in the B plot, and like someone finishes a sentence said in the A plot in the B plot, and that is just some supremely funny comedy.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to really explain why it works so well with
you have
the episode.
It's really, you gotta watch the episode.
If you haven't watched the episode in a while or whatever, I highly recommend rewatching just to see how those two stories intersect in funny ways. And I will say also that this episode has maybe the funniest moment in the whole show to me, which is the finale of basically Starlight losing control of her spell. The bottle smashes, and the magic inside basically infects 3 random townsfolk.
One of them being Granny Smith. Who is hilarious.
Yeah, the other being the grotesque giant bulk biceps, who is just a big steroid induced weird Pegasus guy, and then just some random towns person. And basically the spell's effects take over their minds or whatever and cause them to speak the thoughts that Starlight has been bottling up.
Yeah.
And so Trixie's being yelled at by all these random townspeople who she has no idea why they're angry at her, and the hilarity of some of the stuff that's said is just all over the top.
Yeah.
I think my favorite line is
the Granny Smith one.
The Granny Smith one. So of all characters, Granny Smith is the one that conveys Starlight's frustration over Trixie constantly bringing up her dark past.
Yeah.
So Granny comes up and says, "You don't always have to bring up my dark past."
I didn't even know you had a dark past, Granny Smith.
So and what is Granny Smith's dark past? We can only speculate, right? Yeah.
There's some shady stuff I think that
totally,
she has done, but
yeah. Poor Trixie just has no idea. Yeah. What a good episode! So funny. Yeah. And then it all ends with a very touching make-up between Starlight and Trixie. More like make-out, am I right?
Oh.
It gave us some pretty strong shipping fuel, let me just put it that way.
Oh, God. So, let's move up your list.
Indeed. So next up is a royal problem.
And this I do have on my list.
Yes.
This is my number 9. So, I love watching Luna and Celestia interact with each other.
Yeah.
And this was a great way to see their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And then it does the classic, let's role switch them. Luna's going to take over Celestia's job, and Celestia's going to do Luna's job, because it's that classic, I think your job is more easier than my job.
Walk a mile in my shoes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And I'm going to throw out some fandom stuff here. So if you ever see Two Snacks, he does what's called the Two Best Sisters play.
Yeah.
Which is a remake of the Two Best Friends, done as Celestia and Luna, and I cannot for the life of me never disconnect those two. So when you watch an episode like this and then you put those two characters in that place, it's more funnier than it needs to be.
Yeah, it takes a premise that could have been just by the numbers, and the way this actually happens, like the way that they are forced to walk a mile in the other's shoes, is Starlight Glimmer just being so bold and ballsy and just basically saying,
"This is great. I'm glad you're bringing this up."
Yeah, we have to, right? Like it's Starlight epitomizing what I like about Starlight. She's the only main character who would do this. She goes up to the rulers of Equestria, says, "You know what? This is a friendship problem. Here's how we're going to solve it," and swaps their freaking cutie marks.
And so you have to work,
and they are forced to work as their opposite roles for an entire 24-hour period, I believe it is.
Yeah. And like at first you're like, well, bye Starlight, you're sent to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even Twilight's like losing her mind. You did what?
Yeah. Twilight is just aghast that this has happened. Twilight, never in a jillion years would Twilight ever think of this scheme.
No.
Ever do
no
it.
one would do this.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's like running up to the king, slapping him in the face, and going, "What?"
Yeah. What now? Yeah. It ends up being just the kick in the butt they needed to mend the relationship, though.
But
yeah,
very ballsy.
Very ballsy. So I will say as well, along with the humor that you mentioned, which is very good. There's some really good drama and genuine emotion in this episode.
You feel sorry for both of them.
Yeah.
Like when you actually see what they have to do for a day, I would not be able to do Celestia's job. That's so boring.
Yeah. The soul-crushing nature of Celestia's job and the sheer high-intensity stakes of Luna's job.
Not to mention the loneliness of her job.
Exactly. So Celestia was really, really blown away by how unable she was to cope with Luna's job.
Yeah.
Luna's soul was crushed by doing Celestia's, and Celestia was just like, I can't. Yeah. It was really cool to see the dark side of Celestia through a figment of Starlight's imagination, actually, as well.
Yes.
So I guess
we get to see a good rendition. The opposite of Nightmare Moon is
Daybreaker.
And my God, that's a freaky, scary idea.
Yeah. Like the eternal light.
Yeah.
A forever burning monster of
radiance.
Exactly. Monstrous radiance. Yeah, so we get to see a pretty epic battle between
and just the mind game that I was trying to play with Celestia.
Yeah.
You wanted me. This was something you wanted when you kicked your sister to the moon.
Yeah. Some part of you wanted this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the battle between Nightmare Moon and Daybreaker is pretty rad.
Yes.
Yeah. So this episode has it all. It has ballsy Starlight, it has awesome humor, and some genuinely cool drama.
And some action, just to top it off with.
Yeah, everything you could want. Good episode.
It feels like it should have been a two-parter, really.
And yet it didn't feel rushed, and that's pretty remarkable. They could definitely have found a way to do even more with this, but they didn't have to, and that's commendable.
All right, we've talked enough, I think, on this one. We should move on.
I suppose so. So let's go with Sounds of Silence next.
This is one you have on your list. I do not have.
Yes, and this was a contender, as we mentioned earlier in this debate, these discussions. My second favorite song, which I could call on some days my number one song, is debuted in this episode. The Kieran as a race are awesome. I just thought Autumn Blaze was a supremely charming, lovable, and compelling character. She got for having being a one episode character. She kind of feels like Hank Scorpio.
She got a lot of mileage.
Simpsons, yeah. Like she said, she's so memorable that she transcends her episode, and fan art of Kieran's is being drawn to this day.
Yeah.
We got to see an entire culture, an entire, basically like story arc that we never would have seen, like a corner of Equestria that we never would have seen without the map. And this is the best map episode that we ever got.
Yeah. And the pairing, great pairing. Applejack and Fluttershy.
They could have they could have squandered this in any number of ways, but Applejack and Fluttershy had equal moments to shine in this episode, and they were both absolutely critical to the successful resolution of the conflict.
And I love that they come up with two separate solutions.
Yeah.
That butt heads.
Yes. Yeah. They come to blows almost.
Yeah.
With their disagreements, and that causes the Kieran to freak out. But they are able to show that by having those different opinions, they were able to save the day, and that's what's such a cool way to resolve the plot. Yeah.
Also, if you ever want an example episode of where Fluttershy is coming the shyness,
yeah.
she puts her foot down on Applejack quite hard.
Yeah. She really does. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, actually. Yeah, it's just a really cool, well-paced episode with so much happening, all done so well. The writing just is masterful. Great episode. Exactly, chef's kiss. Yeah. Let's talk about Keep Calm and Flutter On next.
Let's do, because this is my number 7.
Yeah.
And this, I'm going to take over because this is really, I love this episode.
Go for it.
This is where we redeem Discord.
Yep.
And this is the spotlight moment for Fluttershy. This is where we see how far Fluttershy has come.
Yeah.
Is she's willing to tolerate Discord's nonsense, and it almost feels like she's a pushover to it.
Yeah.
Which everyone, I imagine everyone's pulling their hair out at that point.
Yes.
But then she really turns it around on him, and it's like she played the best game of chess with Discord and won.
Exactly. She outwitted him straight up.
Yeah.
Like the other main thought, the other her friends.
Yeah.
They were basically saying the whole way, rightfully, this is a bad idea. This will backfire. Discord cannot be trusted, and they were right. But Fluttershy's methodology was so sound that she was able to use that against Discord.
Yeah. So I'm trying to wrap up the episode real quick without spoiling too much, but basically she shows Discord I'm the only friend that actually you would ever have.
Yeah.
And Discord then realizes that's valuable to me.
Yeah. He became friends with Fluttershy throughout the episode without knowing it had happened.
Yeah.
And when it was looking just like it was about to end, he's like, "Oh crap! I don't want this to happen. No, I'm defeated."
Well played.
Yeah. He literally says, "Well played, Fluttershy." Yeah. God, it's such a good episode. I said, Fluttershy jumped up my ranks after this episode because of how cool she was portrayed, how clever she was, the sheer amount of character development and the strength of the writing. This episode, it's absolutely top 10 material without a question. Let's see. Next up would be Frenemies.
Yep, this is number 4 on my list.
Yeah, this is number 3 on mine. So, in this episode, the bad guys team up, and as I alluded to before with my praise of Season 9, this is where the show's best story arc begins. But when you look at this episode as a standalone episode, it's so strong on its own, it doesn't even need the rest of the arc to shine.
No, I could easily jump into where this happened.
Yeah.
And I would just assume, okay, they just hang out with each other, but they're never really friends. And then this is the episode where they start learning, hey, teamwork goes a long way.
Yeah. It starts out with them, dysfunctionally arguing in their lair. They sing an awesome song that we both discussed as one of our favorites in the show. And then they go to retrieve this artifact. They each have their own very distinctive approaches individually for how they're going to do this.
Which all fail.
Well, the funny thing is...
Well, T-Rex is I'm just going to sit back and watch you guys fail because I know this is not going to work. Exactly.
It's more evidence of why T-Rex is great because he's not the dumb character who's just oh, dude, I'm going to brute force my way up this mountain. He's he tries a couple things. He's yeah, this isn't working out. I'm going to set up a lawn chair and a campfire, and when the other two fail utterly, I'll be able to learn from their failures, and we can relax for the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and we do get to see some super entertaining moments where Cozy is trying to manipulate this guard mostly to no success, just because he's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah. I just love the bonding, like,
yeah.
they're around the campfire and they're making fun of Twilight and everything.
Oh, that's so, yeah. The way
do your
they
Twilight
become
impression
friends,
again, Chrysalis.
Yeah, yeah. The way they become friends is very fun. And then their ultimate teamwork to retrieve this artifact pays off spectacularly.
And then the good old, let's backstab the guy who put us in together.
It's such an interesting way for the show to go, because at the start of season 9, we're introduced to this brand new guy who we're assuming is going to be the ultimate evil in the show, and we assume, okay, now the villains will team up and form a league with Grogar, the new villain, at the head, and that'll be that. But nope, what the show decides to do instead is this team of villains that we've come to love says, you know what, we're powerful, why do we even need this new dumbass?
Yeah.
Let's just do our own thing.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any other team-up episode that played out that way. I just, there's no examples coming to mind.
No, I can't think of any.
Yeah, I just love that twist. What a cool way to go. Yeah. If you like villains, check this out.
And I think we're at your number 2?
Yes, we are. So my number 2 as a Rainbow Dash fanboy is Wonderbolt's Academy, and in my humble opinion, this is the very best Rainbow Dash episode that we ever had. This episode gave her the spotlight, shows why she works so well as a character who is loyal, who cares about her friends above all else, and the way they achieve that is by setting her up against a rival who is very much her equal in terms of skill set, and even in terms of some ego and that sort of thing. But we find out in the end that the fundamental difference between her and this rival is caring about others. So that in order to break a record, they whip up this awful tornado, I guess it is, that threatens to rip apart a balloon containing RD's friends who are visiting. And RD immediately abandons all hope of becoming an awesome show-off and springs into action, saves her friends, and then gets real pissed at the antics that her rival pulled off.
Yeah. And it brings it up with Spitfire.
Yeah.
And basically says, look, if this is what it takes to be a Wonderbolt,
yes.
I don't want it.
Yeah. And I can't state enough, like, that might be my single favorite scene in the entire show. It really shows what loyalty is all about. Like,
yeah.
You are true enough to your own ideals that you're willing to give up on your biggest dream of all to stay true to yourself. That is so cool. It's my favorite lesson in the entire show by far. Amazing, amazing scene. And what a great episode. Just love that episode.
I kind of want to see what your number 1 is.
So I'll show you and then we'll discuss it later.
Yeah. Just so I don't go over it.
Yep. So we'll leave this one here for at the end.
Yeah.
And
perfect. That's what I thought it was.
And I skipped over your number 1, by the way, in my discussion here. So we'll get to that. So let's cover your other ones.
So, I'm just going to go actually up the list here. Make new friends, but keep Discord.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of, we're continuing the Fluttershy Discord pairing.
Yeah.
And we're bringing in the fact that what does Discord do when Fluttershy has other friends to hang out with?
Yeah.
And we find out Discord can get very wrathful.
Uh-huh.
And kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, too, that I feel like the perfect character to pit against him was a stoner hippie character.
That just,
who
like,
just does
mellowed
not care.
out. It's like, yeah, you do your thing, man.
like she's not fazed at all by any of his antics or any of his wrath or anger.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, man, you're kind of harshing my mellow. what is it? Can you turn it down a skosh? I think she said.
Yeah, a skosh.
Like, never more
You're kind of intense.
He's
Can you
never
turn it
been-
down a skosh?
Yeah, he's never been ever more butthurt than when she says, turn it down a skosh.
Ah, skosh.
God, I love that moment.
And all I'm thinking is like, this was a villain.
Yeah.
If he actually was like this
Yeah.
when we fought him, I don't think we would have won.
No, he was not. He was not taking the main six seriously at all.
Yeah.
If he was like this and this angry and vengeful in the two-parter, he might have won.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This is what happens when you deal with gods.
Pretty much. Is this the episode where that male pony is lost in time and space?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good moment.
I love just how angry he is. Is like, oh, my invitation to the Garen Galloping Gala. Why did it take so long? It was really hard to find your fucking place.
Yeah. Can you help me find the door? And then he just throws him into the void, floating around with all these other chaos creatures. Am I imagining it, or is he grabbed by a bird and carried off to parts unknown at some point?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I'm remembering that correctly. Some giant eldritch bird or something.
Yeah, just I feel sorry for this male pony.
Yeah. Got a raw deal.
Got a really raw deal.
Yeah. I also like that bizarre sock dimension that Discord threatened to throw Treehugger into.
Oh god, that was the icing on the cake for that episode.
Yeah.
She's looks at it super afraid.
She's actually afraid at one point.
What is that? Your new home!
It's just this bizarre, horrible sock puppet that's so out of place in a cartoon by being a live-action creepy sock puppet.
Yeah.
It's quite effective. I recommend checking that scene out for yourself if you have not seen it.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Alright, so we move up. Party of One is the next one on my list.
Yep.
And this was a really hard sell for me because there's a lot of reasons not to like this episode.
Yes.
But that one scene, man, I cannot shake it. I can't.
I think why this episode is so important to you is because it got you into the show more or less. Even alongside that Applejack episode, right?
Yeah. This was after watching the Applejack episode, I took a little break.
Yeah.
Kind of okay, what is the fandom doing with this?
Yeah.
And I saw this scene.
Yeah.
And I immediately went, I have to see the context for why this scene is a thing.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it's the second last episode of the season.
Uh-huh.
So I had to watch the whole season to get the context. And at that point, you're too far in, you can't back out.
Yeah, and even if I feel, and I think you would agree, that a lot of this episode feels like fluff at times and kind of weirdly paced.
It's very weirdly paced, I will give that.
Yeah.
I love the kind of feel-good vibe it tries to give you at the beginning. It really makes the descent into madness scene more effective, I find. And
I do get why they were spending so much time on build-up, because it really makes that scene work. But I could do with it. I could have done without hearing this afternoon for the fourth time or whatever.
Yeah, the repeat gag was not great.
Yeah, it was a bit too much. But I will say that aside from, I'll let you describe a bit more about why you love that scene, because it's such a good scene. But another scene that I really liked in this episode was when Pinky dragged Spike into an interrogation room, basically, and was just grilling him about what he knows about what's going on, and Spike is just admitting the most stupid stuff, and I love it.
I want you to confess. Sometimes I'm the one who used up all the hot water taking a 7-hour bowel bath yesterday.
Yeah, and sometimes when no one else is looking, I flex into the mirror or whatever.
Yeah. Hey, Spike, looking good.
Yeah. Looking real good, Spike.
And she has that dumbfounded look that is not anything I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, and so she forces him to confess what she wants to hear, basically, and then begins the downward spiral, which you can describe. Because
which
it's so
basically is a mental break of Pinky.
Yeah.
She feels her friends don't actually care for her. They want to get rid of her, and she can't accept that. So she goes into her own mental world where she creates new friends of a bucket of turnips, a bag of flour, a thing of lint,
Mr. Turnip,
Rocky, Sir Lancelot, and Madame Laflower.
There we go.
And it's just the background music is so disoriented, and she's conversating with these inanimate objects and giving them their own voice.
Yeah.
And it cuts out to her just like zipping around the table,
Yeah.
moving them around as they're talking.
Yeah. It's
And
very surreal.
It's very surreal, and you're like, she is totally gone.
N-
And then, of all people, Rainbow Dash walks
Yeah.
in and almost falls victim to the madness.
Yeah, I really like how this plays out.
She comes in, Pinky's like, I'm not going anywhere, and then puts Rocky's like, yeah, chump. You call it a chump. Chump says Rainbow Dash when she knocks over the rock pile, and then goes, all right, we're leaving.
God, it's so good. Oh my God, what a funny scene. Just like, okay, I'm not giving into this madness.
No.
We're out of here. And then, yeah, there's a very good scene where she drags Pinky inch by inch back to a barn. Who knows how many meters or kilometers away it is.
Like,
Yeah, so good. It is definitely like one of the most iconic scenes in the entire show, bar none.
it is. I can see the gripes that people have with it, though, and that's why it never didn't make the top number one.
There is no flaw with that scene. The rest of the episode you can poke at, but that scene is flawless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tanks for the Memories is the last one that I don't think we shared in
That's
time.
right. Correct.
And this one deals with death.
Believe it or not.
In the most subtle way possible,
Yeah.
but in the most believable way possible. So the episode is that Rainbow Dash has a pet turtle who is going to hibernate for the winter, and Rainbow Dash cannot accept that. She's going to go winter without her loved tank.
Yeah. Boy, does she love that tortoise.
Boy, does she love that tortoise.
She sings
To
a
the
song
point
about
where
it.
she dropped a winter nuke on Ponyville.
Uh-huh. Yep. Keep in mind, she is like the chief weather pony of Ponyville. On top of all this, she was willing to sabotage all of that just to make it so that she didn't have to lose her pet.
Yep.
Kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy. And if you know the 5 stages of death, it handles each one of those very well.
Yes.
And you can even point out where and when each stage happens for Rainbow Dash.
Yeah.
And the crowning moment is the Fluttershy puts her foot down on Rainbow and is like, your winter is going to be tankless.
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
And everyone like looks at Fluttershy like, what the hell, Fluttershy? That's harsh.
And then, of course, Fluttershy and Dash and the whole company break down in tears.
Yeah.
It's except for Applejack, who cries on the inside.
And Twilight, who's like,
don't drag me into this. Come on.
yeah.
It's very, very funny.
It's a very funny, very well done episode. I think it had your favorite song.
Yes, it did. Yeah. I mentioned it earlier, but All Fly is RD's epic solo that was at the top of my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how it gained number 3 in my list.
A solid choice.
All right, I think that's it. We just got to do the honorable mentions and then the final episodes.
Yep.
So do you want? We'll just go back and forth on the honorable mentions.
You know what? You run down yours first because my laptop is running out of juice, or ran out of juice, and I'm going to plug it in again.
Okay.
So you run down yours first.
So, I couldn't have done the honorable mentions without mentioning Applebuck season, the scene that got me into the show long enough for me to actually commit to it. And that is, of course, Applejack smacking face person to the ground. Next on my list is Feeling Pinky Key. And this was, I overlooked this episode. I had to go back and rewatch it. This is a great Twilight and Pinky pairing, in my opinion. This is reality versus superstition. And the whole episode is basically Twilight being like, there has to be a logical explanation for everything that happens. That's science.
Yeah.
And Pinky going, there's things that happen that science can't explain.
Yeah. I really do like seeing, and I wish we had seen more of it actually, Scientist Twilight.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to like the science of friendship.
Yeah. Researcher Twilight or Scientist Twilight, I really wish we had more of.
There was a lot of really cool angles that they took Twilight's character in season 1 that unfortunately weren't really explored more.
No. Going down the list, Putting Your Hoof Down. This is where we first meet Iron Will, and the whole pretty much Fluttershy almost drops an F-bomb.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Gets awful close.
Gets really awful close. This is where she's trying to learn to be more assertive, but learns that instead of being assertive, she becomes aggressive.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference in that.
Yeah. Fluttershy trying to evolve beyond her season 1 self and kind of going too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty funny stuff.
Pretty funny stuff. She talks to Angel, which is a season 9 episode where we finally get Angel speaking. The whole episode is Fluttershy and Angel swap bodies.
Yeah.
And Angel has to like live a day in Fluttershy's shoes and realize how kind of annoyingly hard that is. And poor Fluttershy has to try to travel around as Angel and realizes the dangers of being a tiny bunny.
Going through the Everfree Forest of all places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just Angel's attitude, like...
It's cool to have his quirks vocalized for the first time. And Andrea Libman, who does Fluttershy's voice, also voices Angel, and it's really cool how different she's able to make him sound.
Yes. And just that line, I was like, I love Discord and I want to marry.
So many ships set aflame.
And then my last one was It's About Time. This is where Twilight time travels back to tell herself to do something to avoid a tragedy that she messes up and doesn't explain the tragedy well enough, so it leaves current Twilight wondering what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's like basically like going through all these steps to prevent whatever was going to happen, and ends up looking like her future self, which looked like
Solid Snake
like
with an eye
Snake,
patch
yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, or what's his name? Snake Plissken from whatever that movie is. I'm blanking on his name. It's the same. It's the same idea though. She's got the bandana, the eye patch, the scar, a rubber suit. It's like, how the hell does she end up like this? But they find a convincing way to like convey everything that happens to her throughout the episode. It's really quite funny.
It's really quite funny, and I love that it's like, wow, you look horrible. How far in the future are you from? I'm from next Tuesday.
Are you from an epic pony war in the distant future, I think she says, or something like that? Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm from next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Something to really look forward to.
Is that a Spike line? That sounds like a Spike line.
I think Spike does say. Or somewhere along the lines of that.
Something like that. That's good either way. I like that as a Spike line, even if it isn't one.
And her stealth team for sneaking into the palace to get this time spell to go back and tell herself, hey, don't fret the future.
Yeah.
Her stealth team is Spike and Pinkie Pie.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. So mine would be, in no particular order, Rarity Investigates, which is an awesome episode about Rainbow Dash being pinned for a crime she didn't commit, and Rarity donning the disguise of a noir-style detective trying to help her pin down the true culprit. And it ends up being just a super charming homage to old-style films. It's got some like black and white shots and the old private eye monologuing style narration. All the while RD is tagging along, not super happy with how things are going.
No.
But it ends up working out quite well in the end, thanks to Rarity's keen eye to detail.
This is their second time doing kind of this mystery investigation thing, and I feel they do it a little better. Other than...
I think they do it a lot better.
Yeah, well, okay, fair. other than, like, you obviously, the audience already knows who did it.
The point isn't who did it so much as, like, finding the clever clues as to clearly pin the crime on this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty neat that it's like a personal hero of Dash's that ends up being a total asshole. She's better than him in every possible way.
Yeah.
Not just a better flyer, but a better person.
Yeah.
By far. So that's pretty cool. What I also like about this episode is it's the very first episode starring exclusively Dash and Rarity. And I really love their friendship dynamic a lot. It's very underrated. It might be the most underrated dynamic of the main six to me personally. I think they get along swimmingly. They're both ambitious ponies, but they find a lot in common with their, the fact that they both have
seem like they'd be too opposite to be together, but they really aren't.
Yeah, they don't squabble in the way that AJ and Rarity do, because they aren't like polar opposites, but they have some commonalities that you wouldn't think they do in terms of their ambitions, their just overall goals. Like, they're very goal-oriented, both of them.
Yeah.
So they end up being pretty cool friends, I think. Good stuff.
All right, next on your list.
Next on my list would be No Second Prances.
All right, this is where we build the Trixie and Starlight.
So this is the redemption episode for Trixie, really. It's where Trixie goes from occasional appearing sort of villain character to full-fledged secondary beloved character. Anyone who hates Trixie after this episode, I've just got nothing to say to them, frankly. It starts out in a really fun way with Trixie genuinely enjoying befriending Starlight, but also wanting to get one over on her longtime nemesis Twilight. And the way that all plays out in a really unfortunate way for Trixie, it means that she's becomes very much in danger of losing her new friend thanks to her desire to one-up her rival. And Trixie almost commits suicide by Manticore. Kind of dark.
It got really dark there.
It did.
And I'll be honest, I kind of wish she got in.
No, you don't. Wrong. No, I love the way the episode plays out. Trixie is at her trixiest. She's smug. She's insufferable at times. She's just a lovable jerk.
Yeah.
Who finds a friend who truly gets her, and vice versa. Starlight needs Trixie just as much as Trixie needs Starlight.
I will agree to that.
Say that. Yeah, I say that confidently. They are a great pair. They just complete each other.
I was only joking, by the way. When I was actually watching that scene, I was like, I hate this character, but I don't think like this should be the resolution I would seek.
Yeah. That's the wrong path, and you know it. Here's one that you don't think much of at all, I don't think, but I like quite a bit, which is Saddle Row Review.
Okay. Yeah, this wasn't really high on my list of...
No. So what I like about this episode, and admittedly it loses a little bit of its spark on a rewatch just because you know what's coming, but it's such a different episode. So what it is instead of the usual slice of life, it's a thing has already happened.
And we're recounting the events from different pony stories.
So we're getting 6 different perspectives on how something unfolded. And that means that there's this interviewer that's trying to write an article for how the grand opening of one of Rarity's new chains went. And they all have a very interesting recollection of how things went down. It's not like they're lying, but they all have a very fun perspective on how everything plays out.
Yeah.
And the interview style lends for some very hilarious new jokes that we don't really get before, like Dash kind of like just like like saying one thing and then in the actual show we get to see that she did something completely different. What I'm thinking of is when she and AJ were like riffing on Twilight in the interview for making up this lame song about sweeping, and then when we cut back to the episode, we see that AJ and Dash are singing along with this
happily along with this.
Exactly, they're like way into it. So
yeah.
I just love the discrepancy between what they're saying and what actually happened.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a very fresh approach for the show, and I really liked how it played out. I still think the jokes mostly hold up. It loses some of the freshness on a rewatch, but not enough to kick it out of my honorable mentions by any stretch. Then there would be Stranger Than Fan Fiction, an awesome Dash episode that stars. This is more or less the equivalent of Pinky's cheese sandwich episodes, except this is Dash and Patton Oswalt as Quibble Pants, the turbo nerd that we all hate but recognize in ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think Quibble's actually a pretty good character. He has some legitimate points. So the whole conflict of the episode ultimately boils down to this is a conflict between someone who loves an entire body of a work of fiction and someone who used to love it but has fallen off for one reason or another, and the latter person insists that it now completely sucks and is garbage, and the former person is like, what the hell, man, you're not a real fan of the show anymore then, and there's a conflict that arises from that.
Yeah.
I really like that it gives both sides some equal merit. It doesn't say, hey, you fanboys that think stuff sucks all the time, you're just a bunch of whiners. It does not say that at all, because Quibble is actually a really smart dude who helps solve the episode's problems in a really satisfying way. So I appreciate that.
He brings up legit points of why it's no longer good.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to argue against them.
Yes. Yeah. You could complain that he's too skeptical about being abducted by these
the henchmen.
By the henchmen, like Daring Do's nemesis show up and kidnap them, and Artie's insistent on this being real because she obviously knows better because she knows Daring Do personally. Quibble rightfully is skeptical, but maybe skeptical for a bit too long. But it fits with his character, I guess, so it's not a big deal. It's still funny. I love when Dash actually shows that she's an action hero, saves Quibble, and he's like, what the hell? You are Daring Do, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, very satisfying. And like I said, Quibble gets his moment to shine when he's like solving the puzzles in the tomb and gets RD and Daring out of a bind as well. Everybody gets their moment, and nobody's made to look like the wrong party.
No.
Like that episode a lot.
I think you have one more.
And one more would be Top Bolt, and this is a team up between my two favorite main six, so I love it from that angle alone. But I think it stands up well beyond that. I just like that they were able to make both approaches again. It's a little bit like the other map episode that we loved so much, which had Flutters and AJ. Yeah. Both Dash and Twilight have a very different idea of how to break the news to someone that they're not as hotshot as they think they are.
Yeah.
And it ends up Twilight is totally right about that they need to be honest to this guy in order to make him break free of his crappiness. Yeah. But Dash's approach is very much needed for the other friend in this particular dynamic, who is supporting him without breaking the unfortunate news that he sucks to him. Yeah. And basically boosting her confidence, and only by doing that can the two of them work together as a flawless pair. Right. So I really like that they both contributed equally to the story's resolution, and just super funny to see Twi and Dash interact. It's always a pleasure.
There's one nitpick, though. Yep. I think we both agree on it. Yep. Is the guy who thinks he's really good about himself because his friend constantly helps him. Yeah. Has never practiced a day alone in his life.
It's a little hard to swallow the idea that he somehow has gone from childhood to adulthood without figuring out that he sucks. Like he's never spent a single moment apart from his superior friend to find out that he is kind of a failure. It's hard to believe, but ultimately it's not a big deal. It's a nitpick, but it's not. It doesn't ruin the episode.
Nitpicks, yeah, really stretching there. But
yeah. Still love this episode. It's got a really good lesson and some good new characters.
All right, and since you are the guest, I am going to let you reveal your number one first.
All right, here we go.
So Curtis's number one episode is...
The very best episode of the show is The Mean Six. And we touched on this episode briefly earlier with my effervescent praise for Mean Twilight, but this episode that she came from is perfect.
Now, anyone paying attention will
Yeah.
realize that Devin's list was a little shorter than Curtis's. And this is because the Mean Six is number 6 on my list.
Yeah, we jumped over that one a little bit. And that's because we want to save the best for last, as it turns out.
Yeah.
So, or one of the best for last, let's say.
Yeah.
And this episode...
Well, I just didn't want to talk about an episode that we're going to...
Exactly. So, this episode has a rare combination of, in my opinion, flawless writing, perfect pacing, great stakes, an excellent setup to the whole thing, and I'll break it down a bit more. So the episode opens up with the return of our beloved number 1 villain, Chrysalis, who is not doing so hot on the mental health front.
Nope.
She's lost her hive, she desperately wants revenge against Starlight, and so she concocts this plan to disguise herself as a photographer in order to steal some hair from the Main Six, so that she can concoct her weird spell
to turn trees into the Main Six.
Yeah. So
that quotations obey her.
Yeah. In theory, they'll obey her. It's so what we get is basically a better version in a lot of ways of the discorded Main Six from the season 2.
I have this noted down. This is the discorded Main Six cranked to an 11.
It is. It really is. So the whole setup is done organically, which I really appreciate, by crazy Chrysalis prancing around, talking to these damn trees about how great her plan is and what she's gonna do and why, and it's just so good, man. And the Mean Six are born from these trees, and right off the bat we see that this is not gonna work, but it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's gonna go in some really good directions and cause a lot of chaos, though. So the Mean Six are basically Applejack is a rotten, evil, mischievous liar who is malicious in her lies. And
like above and beyond what a lie is.
Exactly. Like, she's just inventing the most outlandish fabrications, all for the express purpose of, like, hurting others and causing mischief. It's great. And we've got Mean Six Rarity, who's basically Gollum from Lord of the Rings. And
everything belongs to me, and if you want to take it, you're going over my dead body.
I gotta give a shout out to Tabitha's voice acting for Rarity here. It is so damn good. She's like jumping around screaming, "Mine! It's mine!" in this ridiculous, hilarious voice. And man, it's something. And then we get to Mean Six Pinky, who's just like
the most
joyless, lethargic lump of pure sadness.
Yeah. Sure, whatever.
Yeah, she's got nothing, man. She's got no enthusiasm for nothing. She does not care one whit about any of what's happening.
And will not happily, obviously, but will basically flat out state how unhappy and bored she is.
Yep. She's very unhappy about everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bored.
And in a similar but equally amusing vein that takes a quite different direction is Mean Six Dash, who is basically the element of apathy.
Yeah.
She does so. I guess the inversion of loyalty is completely not giving a shit about anybody.
Anything.
She just immediately upon being born, basically she's like, "Later, losers," and flies off to parts unknown to take a nap.
Yep.
We see her occasionally basically just lying around taking a nap, not even bothering to acknowledge anything that's going on.
Nope.
I think there's the one time she actually shows up is when Fluttershy is lost in the forest and she flies by.
This is normal Fluttershy, by the way.
This is normal Fluttershy, who's like, "Oh, I'm lost. Thank goodness, Dash, you showed up." And that in this Mean Six Dash is just like, "Oh, bummer. Later."
Just leaving Fluttershy. What happened?
What just happened? Yeah. And even when the Mean Six are facing their imminent doom, Mean Dash is just literally just goes and takes a nap while a battle is being waged for her existence.
Yeah.
If only we could all give such a lack of a shit. And then we've got Mean Six Fluttershy.
Oh, I love Mean Six Fluttershy.
Who might be the most sociopathic character in the show, to be honest with you.
God damn.
If she had more magical power or the ability to be more dangerous than she is, she might be the most evil villain in the show, honestly. She is just a evil for evil's sake in the most hilarious way possible. So she happens upon this bird who's fallen out of its nest, and she follows it back up to its nest instead of carrying it back up. Like, she watches the thing just pathetically crawl up a tree, taunting it all the way.
Why don't you fly up back to your nest? Oh, right, you can't. It's like, you had nothing better to do with your day than to follow this poor bird.
and ruthlessly mock it. And then she caps it off by saying something that is just, like, coming out of the mouth of Fluttershy is just unbelievable. She looks at all the forest creatures gathered around and says, "I hope you all freeze this winter," and then cackles wickedly. It is something, man. It is something. God, I love that shit. And, yeah, obviously Mean Six Twilight is my favorite part of this episode.
Yeah.
She is just, like I said before, she is just so manipulative, clever, and dangerous as a force in Equestria. If she had been able to survive beyond this episode, we would see her again in the finale wreaking all sorts of havoc, I think.
Really?
I just really enjoyed her screen time thoroughly. So that's a breakdown of the Mean Six. They're the heart and soul of this episode, but we've also got Chrysalis desperately trying to cling to control of this group, failing. She does manage to get several of them in line by sheer force of personality, but in the end, everything just breaks apart. She almost gets killed by Mean Twilight.
Yeah.
It's just a bad scene all around for Chrysalis.
Also, damn Trio of Harmony, you scary.
Yeah. So the way the Mean Six are ultimately vanquished, just as Mean Twilight is about to overpower Chrysalis in a beam struggle, the Tree of Harmony is like, "What the hell are you doing, and why are you imitating my girls like this?" And reaches out and strangles the life out of them, basically.
Yeah.
It turns them into,
absorbs the freaking life out of them.
They're, like, oozing into the ground, and, like...
You want nightmare fuel? Let's just watch this scene. We won't even describe it. Just go watch it.
Yeah, just watch how they die if you want some good MLP nightmare fuel. It's something else. And one last thing I want to say about this episode that I've gone on for probably, like, 10 minutes at this point, feels like... It all concludes without the Main Six, who
even
are
knowing the Mean Six exists.
Without this, they didn't know this happened at all. To them, as you said it best, it's like this is the day that everybody was really weird and mean to each other, and they don't know why.
Yeah, like, they look back and say, "Remember that day where we were just kind of assholes to each other for a little bit?"
That was weird, right?
Yeah, that was such a weird day. What was up?
They had no idea that Equestria was almost destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a good episode. My God, I could go on for hours about that one, but I'll cut it off there.
Yeah, I have to get you short because otherwise we can't do another 3 episodes of these.
We really can't. So I hope you guys understood why I like that episode so much.
Go watch it if
my
really.
favorite episode, my favorite show of all time. That's all I need to say.
And my top number 1, and surprisingly is not a Pinkie Pie episode.
Yeah.
Is Hurricane Fluttershy.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very interesting one because I forgot this episode existed until I looked at your list.
Yeah, and sort of like your list, I skipped over this on mine. I ranked it number 5 on my list. This is a fantastic episode.
Yes. And I'm here to tell you why.
Yes, please do.
So, I'm going to throw it around that no episode had me on the edge of my seat cheering for the 2 main ponies on this one, which are Artie and Fluttershy, and praying to God, actually, that please let this happen. Like, I forgot that this is a show where good things happen at the end, and I thought this might be an episode where they fail.
Genuinely, you could feel those stakes.
Yeah. So, what it is that Artie is tasked with providing water to the weather factory for the rain season.
Yeah.
And you need a certain amount of wind power to do this, which means she needs to assemble all her team, including Fluttershy, to do this. And Fluttershy is not a confident flyer, so she's trying every trick in the book to get out of this.
Yeah, every trick in the book.
Yeah. but ultimately is forced by Rainbow Dash to partake in this. And so we go through the episode of watching Fluttershy struggle with just trying to compete against other Pegasi and getting discouraged. Then we get this cool montage scene of where she puts like all this effort in. Her animal friends are there to help her overcome her confidence issues in performing in front of other ponies. And we cut back to her trying again. She made an improvement, but not really that much.
Yeah.
And she's just disheartened and goes off in like in tears, and you feel really bad. I think this is the only time I ever saw a montage that failed.
It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. But Rainbow Dash is like, I should go talk to her, but I really got to focus on my team here, so I can't console her right now.
Yeah.
And we get to the big day, and Rainbow Dash is told that a good portion of her team is taken out by this flu, and they might not even be able to pull it off. And they attempt it anyway and like get wrecked. And then Rainbow Dash being Rainbow Dash is like, no, I gotta give it everything I got. I can't walk away without knowing I gave 110%.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not even about the record at that point, right?
No.
It's about getting the job done. Something that needs to be done.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of skipped over this. So at first this was about breaking a record that was set.
Yeah.
And then it boils down to, no, this actually needs to be done. This is a very important
There's no chance
task.
we're going to hit this record because all these guys are out sick. But we have to do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Fluttershy comes in and Twilight's there and basically is like, they're doing their best, but they really need your help. And the lesson is basically like, even a small contribution can go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fluttershy and Artie's friendship in this episode is maybe the most enjoyable, one of the most enjoyable dynamics in any episode of the show.
You always get that sense, like in the earlier episodes, where RD just does not care for Fluttershy that much.
Which really wouldn't make sense because, according to the canon, they've been friends since childhood, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really cool to see why they're such good friends.
Yeah, because as you mentioned in I think a previous episode we were doing, RD in the earlier seasons is always come on, because Fluttershy's holding up the plot. So it's good to see just RD actually being a supportive friend, and this is why they're friends.
Yes. They clearly care about each other a lot and trying to not disappoint each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, just when they succeed and you're just, when you jump up and you're like, yeah!
It really is one of the most satisfying, if not the most satisfying, like, hell yeah, they did it moments in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you realize what it's for. It's like, they got the water!
Yeah.
Yeah!
Yeah. Yeah. It's the heights that a show about friendship should strive to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It might be like the most underrated episode just by sheerly how good it is compared to how much it's talked about in my experience online. So
yeah,
and like you said, it wasn't even on your radar. So
no,
I'm really glad that you were able to rewatch it.
I'm really happy I got to see it again and then realize this was far and beyond one of the best episodes I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. Your personal favorite on this list.
Yeah, number one.
This is a lot. Yeah, awesome.
So that is our top 10 list. We'll just wrap up with how we made this list.
Yep.
And we'll kind of close out, and that'll be the end of this.
Yeah.
So, shall we discuss how the deciding process went? Because this was quite the ordeal as well.
It was, yeah.
And we had two different approaches to this.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch every episode.
Yeah, we did kind of deviate in what we did, but it didn't really matter for the purposes of this top 10.
Yeah.
The only difference between what I did versus what Devin did is as I was going through and watching each of the episodes that we decided to rewatch, I also rewatched the two-parters.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to have that story context of each season.
So I think we should break it down. So first what we did is we broke down our favorite episodes into a top 25.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is just for reading the synopsis of the episode alone.
We're going by memory and by just basically jumping on the wiki and just refreshing our memory on all the 200 plus episodes that have existed that show's run.
And then just basically combining the top 25.
Yeah.
And what we would end up with was at most a top 50 list.
Yeah. If every pick on our list was different, we would have a top 50.
Yeah.
But obviously that wasn't the case. There's lots of crossover. It was probably more like a list of 40 or something, was it?
Yeah.
35, 40 something.
We got very close to down to 40 or something.
Yeah.
I want to say 43, but I wasn't really overly counting.
Yeah.
And then we were going to watch that list. And Curtis took it upon himself to also watch the two-parters, where I did not.
Yeah. Yeah. Supremely worth it, but it wasn't necessary for the top 10. I just wanted to make sure my memories of my top 5 two-parters was also accurate, but it was. So,
yeah.
I also just wanted the context of seeing those big story-focused episodes again. So
I think I was very secure in my top 5 two-parters, so I
didn't expect it to change. I just wanted to. It was an excuse to see those again, like I said. So yeah.
I'm trying to just go over here. So what we did, as we were watching the episodes, we kind of critiqued and rated the episodes.
Yeah, pros and cons. You threw in a bunch of criteria like how well did the episode stand up by itself, how good was the lesson, some other stuff like that.
Right. So yeah, here's my critiques of how is everyone in the episode? Did they seem off as characters? If the episode has a lesson, how good was the lesson? Is the episode rewatchable, or do you require knowledge of another episode to get it? Was the episode fun, or was it meaningful? What are some issues with the episode, and how much background knowledge is needed to understand this episode? Or does the episode do a good job, which is similar to number 3?
Yeah.
So
all I did was I listed my pluses for each episode, like what I liked about it, and my minuses, and that was just a good way for me to keep track of how much overall I enjoyed the pluses versus the minuses, and use that as a basic guide to how I would rank it.
yeah.
I gave it a numerical score and used that as at least a basis for creating a top 10 out of.
And then what I did to go a step beyond was, after you gave me your critique, is I did a second thought review where I read your critique, compared it to my critique, and then adjusted my final decision.
Yeah. I'm glad all my writing didn't go to waste.
Yeah.
I was writing like mostly.
You wrote a novel, I think, on one of the episodes, and
I did. I think it was The Mean Six. I wrote a novel for.
Yeah.
And,
I was like, TLDR.
You agree with my points, damn it.
I was like, I already have strong feelings about this episode, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I gave the new, on second thought, a new criteria. Again, it's how well everyone was on the episode. If the episode taught a lesson, was it a good one? And this was not based on who was taught the lesson, but the lesson overall.
Right.
And then the rewatchableness, do you need background knowledge of the episode? And was the episode fun or memorable, or was it just one scene that made this episode?
Mm-hmm.
Which was contrast to one of my top 10 picks, which was the Party of One.
Yeah, but the strength of that scene, it seems to have
it's too much.
eliminate any flaws
Yeah.
that could have weighed it down otherwise, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I tried really hard to be very critical about this and just kind of be like, yeah, it was a great scene. It would be my top 10 scenes in Pony, but I don't.
It was really worth rewatching them all just because my predicted top 10 for myself and my actual top 10 ended up being very different, which surprised me a lot.
That was the biggest concern I had was, like, why are we cross-referencing each other? I think we're just going to have different lists anyway.
Uh-huh.
But we ended up being like...
that was not the case.
You're like, hey, you bring this to the table, and I actually like this.
Uh-huh. Your number one wasn't even on
your list. Yeah. Go figure, huh?
Go figure. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile exercise. Even just as a send-off to the show. Like, we had just finished season 9. We gave it a few weeks to sit, and then we started this up and gave each other our lists and went through it. It was very, very fun. An excellent way to celebrate the show by watching the best of.
So, speaking of which, a lot of people are going to ask us this, and we're going to address it now. Why was the Caesar series finale not in our lists? And I think we both agree that the series finale and the final episode blow every episode out of the water.
Yeah.
It would have instantly got the number 1 spot, I think.
Yeah. And I know that the entire fandom wouldn't agree with that perspective, but for both of us, we felt that it was so strong that we didn't think it even was worth discussing in the same conversations as the others.
Yeah. I felt like I just wanted to give the other episodes more of a chance.
More breathing room, yeah, because the finale had so much going for it, like in terms of it was a 3-parter and it was basically all the build up throughout the series culminating in a way that we both actually really enjoyed. It had a lot of weight behind it that a lot of episodes didn't have. So, yeah.
There was very little we could have done to include it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Without it being unfair.
Yeah. And I just wanted to state very clearly, I rewatched it as part of my big old rewatch fest, of course, and to me it held up just as well as it did on the first watch. I just absolutely adored the payoff of the villain team up. The fights were amazing. The stakes have never been higher, obviously, especially when the Wendigos got involved.
Yeah.
There's just so much happening, and best of all, they didn't have to spend a bunch of time setting it up because the setup had already been done in the previous 2 villain trio episodes.
Yeah.
So it was like action almost from the get-go.
Yeah. We lit the fuse and this is the explosion. Let's see how this falls out.
And they did what I was really hoping that they would do by giving us the big villain send-off in the 2-parter and then letting us have an actual proper main 6 send-off in an epilogue, and that's exactly what we got. It was basically like, here's these characters we've come to love for 9 years, 9 seasons, whatever it's been, and I personally felt very pleased about how everything was sent out. I know that a lot of folks were not so keen on on some various details of that episode, but for me, like, it was just a chance to see everybody one last time and see what lied ahead in the future for them, knowing that we probably wouldn't get any more, canon main 6 shows in the future. Like, it's going to be a different cast for Gen 5 or whatever we get next. So this was really the big last hick at the can, so it was cool to see where their lives were headed. And to me, that was completely successful.
Yeah. So that ties into the last question I want to ask is what are our thoughts and feelings about the series, and where do we hope it goes?
Yeah.
If it's going anywhere.
Yeah. So, obviously, to me it's pretty obvious that it'll continue, and I assume it'll continue in the form of a reboot, which it will be Gen 5. Because that's the MLP brand has been around, as probably a lot of folks know, since the 80s. It's gone through 4 iterations, from an 80s kind of action toy commercial series which was actually not as bad as people probably think it is. And then I kind of forget what Gen 2 is, frankly. Gen 3 is where
abomination.
That's kind of what people think of My Little Pony nowadays, or I guess pre Gen 4 at least, is a Tea Party abomination of vapid nothingness.
Yeah.
There just wasn't much to say. It was just mindless, frilly garbage for children to be entertained by without saying anything substantial. And then obviously Gen 4 is what we just talked about. So the show has gone through some major iterations. Gen 5 will probably, I would guess, hew pretty closely in spirit to Gen 4, but because they know that they struck gold, frankly. I there's no way that they're gonna go back to vapid tea parties after this.
No. God, I hope not. That'd be really dumb.
It would be the dumbest pivot in corporate history.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that it will be... If it holds up to any of the internet rumors I've heard, there will be definitely some heavy adventure-oriented elements. They might even use the main six again, but with some slightly rebooted personalities. It won't literally be the Applejack and Rainbow Dash from Gen 4. And that's the way it's always been for MLP. They've had Applejack around since, I think, Gen 1, just with different personalities every time. Everybody knows, I think, if you're an MLP fan, about the Rainbow Dash always dresses in style meme.
Yeah.
Because Rainbow Dash was basically rarity in a previous gen. So.
Yes. So.
Yeah. The characters that we know and love as they are now will no longer be used for Gen 5, I would guess. But we will get something... I think resembling Gen 4 in spirit, and I really hope it's good. I have faith in them, in a lot of the writers and whatever, to, know what worked for the show and keep that spirit alive. It maybe it won't be as good as Gen 4, and that's fine. Gen 4 might be a flash in a pan, lightning in a bottle that'll never be recreated, but I don't think it has to be. No. As long as Gen 5 is still a good watch, I will be there to check it out.
Fair enough. And we still have comics for Gen 4.
Yes, I should have mentioned that, but please go ahead.
Yeah. So, when did this comic start? You would have the knowledge on that.
2012, I want to say, is when they started.
It was between season 3.
Season 2 and 3. Between season 2 and 3 is when they started. Yeah, it would have been I think fall of 2012 is when they started.
So.
Because it was post Chrysalis.
Yeah, post Chrysalis, definitely so.
Yeah.
So if you've been following the comics, they've been doing an amazing job of keeping the spirit of the show in comic form and doing better adventure stories and world building.
Yes.
And just wacky pairings all around. So definitely, if you get a chance, check those out. And they're still going to continue them, even though the series has ended. It's kind of going to be like a private series, season 10.
To the point that they're officially calling it season 10.
Yeah.
In like some circles, like I think, as far as canon goes, like these are Hasbro-proof comics. So if IDW, the publishers, is calling it season 10, then they must have Hasbro's blessing to do so.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm glad that the characters will get to live on in comic form. I'm quite happy with that. At least for the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens after that.
Yeah. At least until Gen 5 launches.
Yeah, exactly, and then they'll probably focus on that, but hey. The fandom isn't going anywhere. We've had Doomsayers since the beginning,
Oh yeah, I love these. Oh, the series is over. Bye, bronies. And
it's not happening.
Good luck with that. Like,
the fandom was big enough at its peak and there's still so many people who still care about the show and the franchise and the characters especially, that the art has not dried up. The songs are still being created. The fandom will live on, regardless of, even if Gen 5 is garbage.
Yeah.
Gen 4 artists and fans will continue to keep Twilight Sparkle, Rainbow Dash, Pinky, and all the rest alive. It's just not even a concern.
And that is that.
That's it.
So, wow, we ran really long on this episode, but I think we said everything we needed to say.
Yep, my voice is about to give out.
On the showbiz.
Yep.
So, this has been a Starman Debates. Are there any final things you want to say before we close?
I think I've said my piece, but MLP Friendship is Magic is I would say my favorite show of all time. Been great to discuss it with you. Thanks for getting on the ride with me.
Yeah, you're friggin' welcome.
Damn right.
So, no, I'll say my final piece here, which is, this started out as a joke. I didn't really believe I was going to get into this one. Me and Curse kind of have this thing where Curse suggests things for me to watch.
Yep.
Usually he's 100% on.
Yep.
I thought this was the one time he wouldn't, and
Yep.
I was wrong.
Very much the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll finish with one final quote where I told my friend of all the different things you got me into, and I finished with he got me into My Little Pony. And my friend's immediate response is, "You need to kill your friend."
And that to this day he has been unable to bring himself to do so because he knows I am right.
He knows if he kills me, Kurtz wins, and
Yeah.
he knows that.
It's true. What can I say?
Anyways, thank you all for listening. This has been longer than our normal episodes, so if you've stuck it this long, God bless.
Yeah. If you wanted to hear two guys talking about ponies, hope you enjoyed it.
Until then, we'll have a new episode, not pony related, coming out shortly. This has been Starman Debates. I am your host, Devin.
I'm Curtis. Have a great night, folks.
Have a good one, guys.